welcome to Nonprofit Impact on MeetAdvisors.com. I'm Megan Dugan-Bassett of Dugan-Bassett Consulting. On Nonprofit Impact, we talk about what works and what doesn't with leaders in philanthropy, public policy, and direct service. Today I'm really happy to be joined by John Bowman, the president of the Sargent Shriver National Center on Poverty Law. John has great experience, years of experience working in public policy and the ups and downs of public policy. And he had worked for a couple of decades, 2 decades, at a legal assistance foundation here in Chicago.
Right.
Before moving to the Shriver Center in 1996. He was one of the people responsible for spearheading the first state plan to extend health coverage to all children, all kids here in Illinois. In addition to being at the heart of several important public policy initiatives on behalf of low-income individuals in Illinois and elsewhere. He's currently working on the minimum wage fight here in Illinois to raise the minimum wage, and also has won numerous awards. So welcome, John. We're really happy to have you today.
It's great to be here.
Thank you. So John, Sargent Shriver plays a unique role, the center plays a unique role and has a really important voice for low-income people in public policy nationally. Can you say just a few sentences about what that role is, what's unique about the Shriver Center?
We are a nonprofit law office. Our mission is to represent people in poverty, to advance laws and policies and systems that improve their quality of life and their opportunities for upward mobility. So we do that advocacy ourselves, mostly in Illinois, but also in a few other states. But we also do training and information for the advocacy organizations who do that work in every state in the country.
Okay, well that's wonderful. So you're really spreading your impact that way.
Yes.
Some direct service organizations can shy away from doing anything with legislation or public policy, but when they work on it, it can really exponentially increase their impact because they're not only serving the small community they might be working with, but they could be really sharing some of those benefits through improvements in laws.
Yes. The way I talk about that, especially in a predominantly direct service organization, you come across all the time these situations where you have to sit across the desk or sit in a room with somebody and say, I can't help you. There's a brick wall here. There's no program, there's no money, there's no remedy.
Right.
And the thing to understand as a direct service practitioner is that that's a policy agenda.
Yeah.
And the story of those clients running into that brick wall is the powerful anecdotal ammunition to sort of move the policy solution.
Right.
And there's ways to deploy all that, and in that sense, by mining your own caseload, and by being aware of where the public policies you run up against, how that interacts with the real people you're dealing with, you not only then know you have the most authentic description of the problem, and you also have the best possible handle on what would fix it. Right? So we rely heavily on wide networks of people who have high volume contact with people in the communities.
Yeah, and in my experience in public policy, like those are the things that get you excited. Like if you're working in an advocacy organization and you hear from a direct service organization, oh, we're running into this problem, you're like, that's something we can do. Like that's something we can work on, that we can tackle.
Well, and when I did high volume direct service for the first 10 years of my career, sort of classic storefront legal aid in some pretty desperate neighborhoods in Chicago. And understanding the connection between the individual cases I was dealing with and the ways to eliminate a whole category of problems by changing the law, by going to court to fix something, by building a coalition and just talking policymakers into a practical solution. That was the exciting part of direct service for me, in addition to being able to help individuals, is that you could change the whole landscape in the right circumstances. Now, if you're in a nonprofit that only does direct service and doesn't directly engage in policy work because you're on the staff or whatever, just being aware of it and getting into relationship with people who do is the way to do that. So that your staff can have input and influence over the way the whole policy landscape works, without necessarily having to be to be a lobbyist or a litigator or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to kind of delve in a little bit, because some nonprofits that don't have a lot of advocacy work can kind of get nervous, because nonprofits are nonpartisan. That's part of what we're supposed to do, and I think people take that seriously, and I think that's important. But how do nonprofits protect the safety nets? So protect, some of the federal and state policies that provide those, like, the things to catch people when they have no other resources. So things like.
Excuse me.
That's okay. Make me wonder if mine is off. Here, I'll start over with the question. So sometimes nonprofits can get a little skittish about engaging in any kind of policy work or working with legislators, because they're nonpartisan. That's part of what we do. So how can nonprofits be protecting the safety nets? So some of the policies like TANF and food stamps and some of those things people use when they have no other recourse or no other resources at their disposal. How do nonprofits protect those and still stay nonpartisan?
Well, all of the, we're a 501c3,
Mm-hmm.
so we do, advocacy is what we do,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you understand the applicable laws about those kinds of things, it's very clear that there's a fairly bright line about what you can do and what you cannot do. What you cannot do is take sides in elections.
Mm-hmm. Right.
What you can do is advocate on issues.
Right.
And what I would say to the nonprofits is, you don't even really need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
All you need to do is tell your story.
Right.
To talk about the need your program addresses and how effective it is.
Mm-hmm.
If you have data, that's great. If you have anecdotes, that's a little better. If you have both, it's the best.
Right.
And where do you tell those? Well, it's a perfectly legitimate and it's a very good thing to do, to tell that kind of story to the legislators and others who serve your area
Right.
at a time when you're not asking them for anything.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Invite them over to show them your program and
Right.
say, your staff in your district office, you see people with these problems, send them to us, we can help.
Yeah.
Um,
And a lot of
And-
times that's what we hear from legislators, that they only hear from people when they need something.
Right.
But to build that relationship.
You build a
ahead of time.
relationship and you show them that you give them a nice, happy photo opportunity with happy children or whatever you happen to have in your place of business.
Right.
And say thank you a lot. And, whether in your heart of hearts you think they deserve it or not. But they do, it's hard work to be a legislator. You hear from a ton of people. But by building that relationship and showing the value of what you do, you not only protect that policy, you protect the budget allocation that helps to pay for it. And when you do ask them for something, we really need you to vote yes on X,
Right.
which is perfectly legal,
Yeah.
they'll know who you are.
Right.
And they'll say, oh, I remember them. I was over there, they had all those happy kids.
Right.
And they showed me the number about how all the people got over alcohol use or substance use disorders.
Right.
And, you have lots of legislators that I know who are very kind of conservative on policy, who are fiercely protective of the nonprofits in their own district.
Right. Right.
Right, because there's a relationship there, and they trust that the money's being put to good use in those
Right.
places.
Yeah, exactly. So as we mentioned, you've been, in the ups and downs. That policy is cyclical. It ebbs and
Yes.
flows, and it can be challenging, and then easier.
It's cyclical, and sometimes it's just sick.
Yeah. So in times of political uncertainty, what doesn't work? Like, what are mistakes that nonprofits or advocates do that can really backfire?
Well, one mistake is to withdraw and to curl up in a ball and be
Yeah.
defensive.
Right.
It doesn't matter who's in power. You have to show the value of what you're doing.
Right.
And you have to tell the persuasive stories about it. That doesn't change no matter who's in power.
Right.
I think, too, it's a mistake to be self-righteous or too preachy.
Yeah.
I think you have to just talk in a clear way about the value you bring, the value you add to the community and to the people you serve.
Right.
And in a legislator's mind, to their chances for reelection, right?
Right.
You don't have to say it like that, you shouldn't say it like that.
Right.
But that's what's going on behind the
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah.
So I think too that more difficult it is, the more important it is to be in coalition. Maybe not a formal coalition, but an interest group or a set of organizations who have the same kinds of concerns, or there's an important key self-interest that you all have, like for a reasonable budget,
Right.
to avoid disastrous cuts that aren't related to policy,
Right.
to prevent the legislators from being overly ideological one way or the other, but to have it be about real problem solving.
Yeah.
And so that's what I would recommend, is that you mine your caseload for the stories and the data, the proof of your effectiveness, statistical proof, anecdotal proof, endorsements from people. You get in coalition so that you can take those stories to people who are engaged in advocacy or who are similar organizations to you, and you can have more power acting together than you have separately. And sort of engage on that front and give your staff and your leadership permission to spend some time on that, because it pays in the long run.
Yeah. For organizations that have been more involved with advocacy,
Yes.
what are some concrete steps that they should be taking right now, given the political uncertainty of the time, to really get ready for the next
Well,
legislative
so
season?
in Illinois here, we're in the midst of regime change. So there will be a new governor, which means there will be a whole new staff of his, like the budget staff and those kind of, Bureau of Management and Budget. All the agencies will have new leadership, and the top layer of leadership will all be appointed. They'll all be loyal to the new governor. And there's a transition process going on. So the most, I think, important thing to do is to make those relationships.
Yeah.
Find out who those people are going to be. Go talk to them. Tell them what you do. You don't have to ask them for anything at this point other than
Right.
for an opportunity for you to say who you are, to learn
Yeah.
who they are.
Yeah.
And sort of just get the relationships, learn who the players are, try to get on their radar as somebody they should listen to. And then we see, we see where the decision-making is headed.
Yeah.
There will be probably moments when advocacy is required to temper a proposal or to make it even better
Yeah.
or to support it.
Yeah.
And so you keep, so you build those relationships too, so that you have a way to be heard through allies, friends, people who can engage on when you think there's something problematic or when you think there's an opportunity that needs to be grabbed.
Yeah.
So that's all a matter, and so you could sum it up to relationship building, is the new players in government, the people in the landscape around it who do what you do or who can
Yeah.
care about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes people, I think it's important that you said the agencies, because sometimes people don't think about that policy happens at both the legislative level and the agency level, and
Oh,
that
yeah.
there's different decisions that are made at different levels.
Yes, and a lot of it happens, at street level,
Yeah.
even, and that's the agencies, the public employees.
Right.
And then in the agency level, they get an appropriation. That's a problem. You have to have an adequate appropriation, but then they're the ones who decide who gets contracts,
Right.
right? And that's a process that will sometimes depend on who they know, who they
Yeah.
feel confident about. Sometimes, unfortunately, who was helpful in the election.
Yeah.
But there's a certain amount of that goes on.
Yeah.
Any changing of the guard with both political parties.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, thank you. This has been really wonderful. I really appreciate your advice. It was really, I think it'd be really helpful for people.
Great to be here.
Catch more thoughtful nonprofit leaders on meetadvisors.com.